So all these things are subject to framing. Right?
All these things are absolutely subject to framing because the frame, this is just a pure drive. The frame is like the colored lens through which you shine the light,
Right.
and that will alter the behavior as a result of it. So we have the drives, we then have the frames that people perceive those drives through, and that leaves us with some kind of a value, which then engages them in behaviors and certain thought patterns and certain emotions resulting from those higher level conditions. Does that make sense to you guys?
That's perfect.
Thank you. Do you want to come up? All right, go on.
Isn't this a modern version of Maslow's hierarchy?
So he's asking if this is a higher version of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Yes and no. The idea would be the same, but the content is fundamentally different to Maslow's hierarchy. And if you actually read Maslow himself, he himself said, this has never been tested, guys, so this is just an idea, folks, and I'm putting it out there. And for some weird and bizarre reason, the whole psychological community accepted it, adopted it wholesale as a truth, and to my knowledge, it's never been tested. This has actually been tested, which is why I prefer presenting this than Maslow. I'm not, by the way, negating Maslow as its in sort of truth value. It's just, it's untested, and so I can't put anything behind it. Whereas these things are tested, and you can very easily, of course, find reference experiences to back these up as well. Everyone good on that? Do you guys want to come up and come up after him?
So in this, where do things like empathy, compassion, love, where do they come?
Depends on where. First of all, you can have a whole bunch of emotions without having them to be driven by something. Secondly, if they are driven by something, it depends what it is. For example, some people might have empathy, but it's driven by the idea of vengeance, right? You might say, for example, you don't understand other people. Watch me, look, I really get these people, I really feel for them, and so on, right? Empathy might be a form of social justice, right? I really feel for these people, and I want the world to be a better place, and so on. So these emotions still fit in, they just go hand in hand with these other things. They are expressions. Let's put it this way. They are conclusions that people draw as a result of the interplay between a drive and a framework, right? Just like anger. Anger is an interplay between a drive, which is the desire to maintain a boundary, and a framework. People chewing gum are violating my self-respect. So when they chew gum, it leaks out in the form of an emotion, anger, right? Empathy would be the same thing. Given the right mix of frameworks and drives, it manifests in the form of empathy. Of course, assuming there's no biochemical imbalance and so on, which has its own issues as well, right? So remember, all these things are just little pieces of a puzzle, and other pieces will fit into it as well. Physical reality can interfere with all this stuff. If there is a biochemical problem someone has, let's say someone's got a rod just whacked through their brain and it destroys certain areas of their brain, all this stuff changes because the physical reality won't let them process things the same way anymore. Does that make sense? And by the way, there's lots of research like this. There's a gentleman back in the 19th century who's a most dramatic case of this. He was working the railways, long story short, he got a big pole, metal pole, just rammed up through his brain as an industrial accident. Miraculously, he survived. He went to the hospital, they managed to pull it out, patched him up, physically fine. But it destroyed a certain area of his brain, and from that day on, he was a miserable, sour, nasty person. And remember, just before that, he was just happy-go-lucky, friendly, everyone loved him. He, unfortunately, ended his days miserable, alone, and without any friends, and that was the first time that people started looking at the brain in terms of areas of the brain being responsible for certain things. He could not control his moods any longer. They were always on a negative spin, and so his whole life ended up being a very unpleasant, have an unpleasant ending, and that's had a physical cause to it. Do you see where we're going with this? So what we're talking about here is all things being equal, this is one way to look at people. But then you can look at them physically as well, or emotionally as well, or intellectually in terms of the frames that they operate through. Does that make sense to you guys? So the question is, if there's a conflict of values, is it a conflict of actual values or drives? Really, at this point, we're talking about semantics. What comes down to is we have some kind of psychological energy which needs to be expressed in some way, right? If you have a conflict between the two, one of them will be the dominant one, and will alter the other one until there's harmony again. The unconscious mind is very, very good at creating harmony between concepts that should not match. Hence, the desire for vengeance could be expressed in the form of love and empathy. Make sense? Because they'll just harmonize. It's just like, if you imagine two rivers clashing together, they'll end up flowing down one direction. The more dominant river will more likely take the direction, or most of it, but the other one will probably shift it across a little bit as well. So these things have an interplay, and it's very complex. I can give you the basic map to look out for. And more importantly, when you're looking for these values in people's lives, the map I just gave you, the Rice model, the reason I like it is because it allows you then to have a good instinct about where you stop with this. I think it's answering your question from earlier on. What are you looking for? When they're just giving you this verbal stuff around interacting better, doing good, and so on, what kind of things are already being expressed just by that could be a driver? So this, already on its own, tells me it's possibly something around social contact. It might be around acceptance. It might be something around social justice, right? I don't know for a fact yet, but these are all things that are coming to mind, right? As we go down towards this area, more the pleasantness and so on, well, now we've got the idea of tranquility coming in as well. And it also clarifies this a little bit more, so I'm less inclined to think it's about social justice, more around tranquility and social contact being combined and expressed in this way. Does that make sense? Do you see how that works? Yeah. Sorry, Cassie, I want a question first, and then we'll come on to you guys. Come on up. So other drives, like the drive to build, according to, let's put it this way, we can cut the pie up in many different ways. Make sense? According to the Rice model, the drive to build is a result of other drives. For example, to save things, or for social justice, or for getting respect, or something like that. Well, none of this is necessarily true, right? I hope you realize this. Nothing that we've been talking about here is actually true. It's only true enough to be useful, right? So what I'm presenting to you right now is just ways of looking at the world that can make you more influential. Please do not make the mistake of thinking this is an absolute fact and this is how people are and how the world works. Even when I talk about the conscious mind, the unconscious mind, please realize that is also a lie. It's a useful one. It is a useful way of looking at people, but it is not the only way of looking at people. And if the only thing you do is look at people as a conscious and unconscious being, you'll miss a whole bunch of other things. For example, the vast advances we're making in neuroscience that tells about different areas of the brain and what they do and how they work and so on. Does that make sense to you guys? So please don't take the idea, or do not have the idea that anything I say right now is true. It's only true enough to be useful in terms of how you influence and engage other people and so on. Make sense? So we had a couple more questions up here before we go to lunch. Let's start over here, then we'll come back here. Go ahead. Do you want to come up here? You guys may as well just line up behind me, because that way it'll be easier to get the microphone afterwards. There you go. Start from a queue. We can see that people are really interested. Come on up.
Okay. I don't think I really have a very well thought out question, but this really brought something to my mind, which is, except for, iron things in your head, there are clearly people in the world that are really motivated that I'm kind of interested in certain, not deeply interested, but certain things really intrigue me, like hoarders, like people that collect things, that save things.
Exactly.
And I watched they had a TV show, they have these crazy people that have houses full of nonsense, right? And they have people trying to explain to them rationally that this is a bad idea.
Doesn't work.
And I yell at my TV because
that's rational, isn't it?
Well, no, but it's like...
I'm teasing.
But you know what I'm saying. It's like,
know.
my God, the lady has an emotional thing with this.
Exactly.
And so, but I'm just curious with this, if you explain to someone, or if there was, it's like, okay, look, there are these needs. Can we shift some of your needs to other needs?
Well,
or...
Here's one way to look at it. I'm not sure, and I mean, I can tell you what Professor Rice would say. He'd say that you cannot shift someone's needs. They are, in his opinion, biological. I would disagree, but that's an opinion. I don't think that can be proven yet anyways.
I would actually agree with you.
Right?
Yeah.
But the point is, you don't necessarily have to shift the need or the drive. All you have to do is shift how the drive is understood, so how it's perceived, so that you change its behavior afterwards. For example, the chewing gum version. You don't change the need to maintain a boundary for personal integrity. All you shift is the perception of when a boundary is being attacked and when it's not. Right? So
Okay.
chewing gum is not an attack on your boundary, it actually is people respecting your boundary. That's a good thing. So the same behavior, instead of triggering anger in one sense, now it triggers actually, compassion or thankfulness, that people are being respectful.
So you're shifting the meaning of the action.
Exactly. Which goes right back to what we started off this morning, which is the idea of reframing.
Exactly.
The point of reframing is that you channel the ultimate frame, the big one, the kahuna that's just moving all this energy through, and saying, okay, let's just change the filter on this one. Let's change the color of the lens. So instead of everything looking black, it now all looks nice and pink.
Okay. And then just quickly, not that it's an area that I'm particularly interested in dealing with specifically, but if I was to deal with a hoarder, or you were to deal with a hoarder,
Right.
how would you go about, what would you think would be a best or a better way of shifting someone's perception of that?
We'll come on to that when we talk about the whole objection destroyer later, but the quick version of that is what we did here a moment ago, which is find out the value behind hoarding, which is basically them telling you, here are the frames that I'm using in relation to my need to save, that are being expressed by hoarding activity, right?
And then
Now,
reframing.
And then you present another frame where the behavior changes, but the desire is being expressed the same way. For example, to some extent, I'm a hoarder, but I don't have physical objects. I abhor physical objects because I travel a lot and there's nowhere to put them, right? Now if someone gives me a little gimmick, like a duck-shaped thing going quack, I'm going like, what the hell do I do with this? Thank you very much, but all right. But I hoard information, for example. I hoard experiences. So I've just shifted my mindset in that sense. And so the driver is expressed in a very different way. That would be the quick version of it. Okay?
I understand. Thank you.
Do you come up? One second, he was up there before. And then we will have a lunch break. We'll finish this off and then we'll have a clean start to the afternoon.
Is this list presented to us in a kind of hierarchy or a level of
No.
universality?
Absolutely not.
Okay. And real quickly, could you just review the bullet points of the 16 points so we make
Sure.
sure we got them all?
Everyone may as well take... Oh, you may need to review that very quickly. Can I do that just before we go to the break so we can just get the questions out of the way first? Any other questions or comments? You had something very quickly and then... Go ahead.
If it's a driver like vengeance,
So there's the driver like vengeance.
how to reframe?
How to reframe it? Well, that's basically what he was talking about as well. So we'll come on to those things more later on. Okay?
I'm just trying to make sure I understand for my own clarity and hopefully for others. If we understand the underlying driver, sex, family, hoarding, for savings and all of those things, and that will better help us to reframe
Yes.
the value to change the behavior.
Yes, exactly right. You will understand, for example, that enjoying life is, to use the Ralph example, enjoying life is more about tranquility and social contact than it is about, say, physical activity, which might be like the thrill and the rush of something, and power, the expression of will. Right?
Okay.
Some people, for them, the idea of enjoying life is, I've got to jump out of an airplane. Why? It's physical, it's active, it's an expression of will. I have to master my emotions, I have to master my fear to do it, and so the rush becomes such a thrill. Right? Those are fundamentally different ways of being a force for good in the world or enjoying life and so on. So this will help me shape my frameworks so that make them more acceptable when I'm going through the whole influencing process. Okay? All right, guys, so let me just run you very quickly through that list again, and rest assured, we will make you a complete set of notes. I mean, I'll give you my teaching notes before the seminar is over. There will be basic notes, but it's really what I've been working from, and I'll have all the 16 drivers on there for you as well, and I'll give it to you again now so you have it. We have eating, which is the need for food in some way. We have romance, the desire for sex. Tranquility, there's the desire for peace and tranquility. The need to be safe, essentially. We have acceptance, which is a need for approval. Curiosity, which is the need to learn or discover something new. Family, which is the need to raise children. Honor, which is the need to be loyal to a certain tradition, value, group, and so on. Idealism, which is about social justice. Independence, which is the need to express your individuality and being self-reliant in some respects. Order, the need to be organized, stable, to have the life be predictable in some ways. Physical activity, that's the need to exercise or move your body, use your body in some ways. Power, that is the need to be able to influence something with your will, to express your will, whether it's on yourself, someone else, or some objects. Saving, which is the need to collect. Social contact, which is the need for friends and relationships. Status, which is the need for social standing, for social hierarchy, and being relatively high in the social hierarchy. And finally, vengeance, which is the desire to strike back or win in a particular context. So we're all good with the idea of values and the drivers that are behind them and the frames and how those things kind of work together as like the light that shines through a frame of spectacle glasses, and at the end of it you get a very different picture depending what's on that frame and how strong your light is or what your light source is. Make sense? That's kind of how I conceptualize the whole thing. This is a very simple model of getting through the values. If you think about those drivers in the back of your mind as you talk to people, it becomes easier to spot the values and which things they're saying are worth following. Always follow the emotion, because that is where the real juices are. That's how you know it's a real driver, rather than just an intellectual construct or something that they say because it'll be socially acceptable, rather than what they truly want or need. Everyone good with that? So we ran a little bit over. We've run a little bit over today, but I thought it was worthwhile spending an extra half an hour doing this. I hope you'll agree. So if you all aim to be back here in about an hour and 10 minutes, we'll start in an hour and a quarter, so at 1:55 on the slot. Okay, guys? Thank you.